For those from the city, Port Lincoln has just one suburb. That's it, Port Lincoln. And we're located, obviously, on the southern end of the Eyre Peninsula, 280 kilometres from Adelaide across the Spencer Gulf by air or sea, and 650 kilometres by road. With around 15,000 residents, Port Lincoln is today famous for its seafood industry, and as Cozzy said earlier, we are the seafood capital of Australia. We're also famous for boating, shark cage diving, and natural environmental beauty. Port Lincoln is also a popular tourism destination for domestic and international visitors alike. Our visitors come for the seafood, the fine wine and dining, our magnificent coastal scenery, and our shark cage diving, the only place in Australia where you can have this incredible experience. Growth in visitors to our visitor centre here have increased in the last 12 months by 20%, and during that time we also welcomed some 36,000 people from 12 cruise ships, with Port Lincoln one of 3 major cruise ports in South Australia. We're also very proud to be Booking.com's most welcoming town in South Australia, and the only South Australian city in the top 10 of What If's Aussie Town of the Year award, ranking 4th this year. I believe these accolades are a reflection of our community and our people, a warm, welcoming regional community that are proud and passionate about their patch. As an emerging regional city surrounded by highly productive farmland and pristine ocean waters, the main primary industry of Port Lincoln is aquaculture. However, our main wharf is the primary export pathway on Eyre Peninsula, with over 1.4 million tonnes of grain being exported through the terminal each year. This all highlights the capacity of Port Lincoln to expand on its role as a major service centre for the region. At the same time, this also presents challenges with regards to road safety, maintenance and upgrades to handle heavy vehicles, particularly with the closure of the Eyre Peninsula rail network in recent years. We welcome the current active conversation about the future of the rail network and the potential investment in the reopening of this infrastructure. We also know that growth requires resources and infrastructure, and particularly water security for our existing and future communities is vitally important. We call on the federal government to work closely with the state and local governments to invest in climate-independent sources of water to provide security to regional communities, security that doesn't risk our current or future industries. I appreciate the conversation with the Premier today and the Deputy Premier and Minister Scriven last week in connection with possibilities for reviewing the science evidence of impacts to our fishing industry and the desalination plant proposed for Billy Lights Point. We may not have as many voters as metropolitan areas, but our industries are the lifeblood of our communities, and we simply can't put them at risk. The location of desalination plants needs to be carefully considered, and if funding is required from the federal government to ultimately land in the correct location, then we stand ready to work with them and our state partners. Prior to the last federal election, the National Farmers Federation identified Port Lincoln amongst 20 regional centres recommended for new investment to facilitate regional renewal, and is one of only 2 such centres identified in South Australia. We're pleased to work closely with both state and federal governments, Regional Development Australia and our local government colleagues as we plan for the future, including considerable work currently going into the redevelopment of the regional plan, and look to harness opportunities as they're presented in emerging industries such as hydrogen, renewables, space and mining, and further aquaculture. In recent months, Port Lincoln has featured in the Regional Australia Institute's Regional Movers Index several times, indicating that the sea change that may have commenced during COVID is continuing, and this is certainly evidenced by our local shortage and affordability of housing. We welcome growth to Port Lincoln that is part of our multicultural heritage, welcoming people from all countries into our community. However, we know that this is going to continue to create challenges for us, but with challenges come opportunities. I've enjoyed much of the discussion and presentations today, and know that we look forward to working closely with you all as we look to address matters that are felt here in Port Lincoln, just as they are in other regions, particularly housing, development, childcare, health services, and of course workforce attraction and retention. Some things I picked up today which I thought were worth reflecting on for further discussion and action include the red tape and regulations and development for infrastructure, housing and employment, roads, rail, and as Sean said earlier, things on tyres, TAFE and skill building. The Premier asked, who has heard of the Northern Waters project? I'd challenge and say the same thing. Who knows about the Billy Lights desalination project? Resilience, drought, fire, floods, synonymous with rural and regional living, community coming together for recovery. More can be done in that space with bushfire mitigation, native vegetation clearance, and that would also assist with housing. There's opportunities for investment and growth and pushing government harder. If you get time while you're here, please take a walk along our foreshore. It's a place of much activity at the moment, thanks to a grant from the state government via the Local Government Infrastructure Partnership Program, who've contributed 50% of the funds to enhance our iconic foreshore. This $7.28 million project will result in an upgraded seawall, renewal of the Pankala Walking Trail, a renewed town jetty built in the 1860s, a new destination play space, upgraded toilets, and an activity space for basketball and netball. Regional city foreshores are destinations in their own right and provide precious recreational space. They're an asset for our communities, much loved by locals, and also attract thousands of visitors each year. I also invite you to explore further in the city to our working marina, for which I will thank the Labor state government over 30 years ago for investing $20 million into its creation, and the recent former state government grant funding for the stadium additions to our leisure centre. We're currently working with state government on the infrastructure repairs and development required to take the marina facilities into the next 30 years. In closing, I sincerely thank you all for your attendance, the sharing and the learnings, the panels and speakers, and particularly the sponsors of the event, the advertiser and Hancock Agriculture. We understand that Country Cabinet will be visiting us early next year, and we look forward to seeing many of you there again. And if you're visiting at that time, I invite you to stay a little longer. Linger in our beautiful Port Lincoln, Gallinyalla, place of sweet water.